Welcome back, friends. It's a long time I started teaching gaseous exchange and respiration as part of advanced biology, and I was using my typed notes, which are in the Microsoft Word format. So I know some of you adopted these notes, and they are also my notes. So I tried to just change my notes which I used in advanced level. I just tried to type them and to put them in this format. So this format, it is good for sharing and even for reading. It is good as compared to this one, which is in a handwritten format. But for this time, I'll be using these notes which are in the handwritten format. However, if you need these notes, it will be very difficult for you to get them. Maybe until when I will finish to type them in a document format like this one, and then this will be easier for sharing. And not sharing such, but you may find them somewhere. So I will just give you directions where you can find these notes, but the materials, they are the same. So if you understood what I taught in these notes, which are in the photograph format, also you understand the notes which are in the typed format. So don't worry. Now we started discussing a few concepts about the gaseous exchange topic, but because I would discuss a few concepts, and because of long time delay due to my subject at university, so now when we are going to continue this gaseous exchange, I'm not doing things like a recap, but I'm just starting a refresh. So don't worry, kama ukuzulia vipindi vilivyopita, tunaanza upya kabisa ili niweze kwenda kwa sequence, and then finish the topic quickly, ni move to other topics. Now what we are saying in gaseous exchange is that gaseous exchange refers to the exchange of respiratory gases between the cell of an organism and the environment. So living organism or cells of living organism, they require air, they require oxygen. Without oxygen, a cell cannot respire. That doesn't mean it will not respire at all. It will respire, but it will use anaerobic respiration. And if you remember your concepts of gaseous exchange and respiration in O-level, your concept of respiration in your form 2 biology, kama cell ikiwa na respire kwa kutumia bila oxygen, itakuwa inafanya anaerobic respiration. And due to anaerobic respiration, the cell will produce a small amount of energy. At the end of the day, that small amount of energy, utajikuta kwamba cell, it will fail to survive as it was required to survive because of the small amount of energy. So that's what we are saying. That's what we are saying in the concept of gaseous exchange and respiration. So we require oxygen in order for the cell to respire. We require oxygen, and also we require oxygen for the maximum energy production of the cell. Kwa bila oxygen, cell ita respire lakini itakuwa na produce energy kidogo, kwa ili cell iweze kurespire na produce enough quantity of energy for the survival of the cell and the whole body, lazima tuna nini? Tuna oxygen. Lazima unajua kwamba tunaposoma any concept in biology we are dealing with, tunaposoma any concept in biology we are dealing with a cell. So everything that we are reading, it is cytology. Kwa hiyo when we are saying gaseous exchange, that means tunachukua gases toka nje tunaziingiza wapi? Kwenye cell. Tunachukua gases toka nje. So let's say this is my cell. Let I draw an illustration here. Let's say I want to draw illustration here to show you a little of what I'm explaining, so that you can understand some few concepts here. So let's say this is my cell. Okay, this is my cell, and in this cell there are different organelles within. So there is maybe nucleus here. There are some mitochondria which perform aerobic respiration. There are mitochondria here. Then it depends if it is plant cell, there might be chloroplast somewhere, maybe oil droplet, ribosomes, and things like that. So these are organelles, and they perform different kinds of metabolic reactions. When we are talking about metabolic reaction, we mean a total of all chemical reactions taking place within the cell. They are called metabolic reactions. Now, these metabolic reactions, most of them they require energy. Because we have two types of metabolic reactions from our knowledge of biochemistry. We have anabolic and catabolic. Anabolic reaction involve synthesis, while catabolic involve breakdown. So in synthesis always we require energy, and for the human body to grow and everything to go well, we need to perform different kinds of anabolic reactions. So in gaseous exchange we are requiring oxygen. Oxygen is important for the energy production. Energy production is important for growth and different functions to be performed in the human body. So from there we have aerobic organism. Aerobic organism, they require oxygen. So aerobic organism require oxygen for respiration. Both anaerobic and most aerobic and most anaerobic organism must get rid of carbon dioxide, a waste product of respiration. So the process of taking up oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide is what we call as gaseous exchange. That's why here we are saying gaseous exchange refers to the exchange of respiratory gases between the cell of an organism and the environment. This is an easier definition of gaseous exchange. When you want to explain the concept of gaseous exchange, using this definition, it is an easier concept. Refer to the exchange, gaseous exchange, we are defining as refer to the exchange of respiratory gases between the cells of an organism and the environment. That is what we call as gaseous exchange. So aerobic organisms require oxygen for respiration. List both anaerobic and most aerobic organism must get rid of carbon dioxide, a waste product of respiration. So the tunaposema gaseous exchange, that means it is taking in oxygen and getting out carbon dioxide. That is gaseous exchange. Gaseous exchange does not involve the cell, does not involve the uses of gas within a cell, but involve exchange of gases. So gaseous exchange, in short, you can say, in easier process gaseous exchange, it can be assumed that the process gaseous exchange, we can say it is the process by which we have lungs here. Let's see, here we have our lungs. I'm not so much good in drawing, but let's say here we have our lungs. This is my let's say this is my left lung, and here is my bronchiole. It is divided into bronchus. So let's say here is my lung, and this lung, it is supplied with blood vessels, and here is my peripheral cell. Here is my peripheral cell. So we have our different number of blood vessels. We have a number of blood vessels which carry oxygenated blood from the lungs to the peripheral cell. These are the blood vessels, and the blood vessels which are carrying oxygenated blood, they are called as arteries. While also we have a number of blood vessels which carry the oxygenated blood from the cell to the lungs. So this route, it is not direct, it must pass through the heart, but I've drawn this for illustration. Now, what do we mean when we are talking of gaseous exchange? What do we mean? Gaseous exchange, what does it mean? Gaseous exchange means it is the transport of gases from outside. If it reaches the lungs, here we have what we call the respiratory surface. So by the first time here, gas diffuse from the air or from outside to blood or into blood. So first diffusion of gases in the process of gaseous exchange, it is from outside outside into blood. That is first diffusion. However, this also takes place in the sequence of events. There are about 5 layers here where the gases passes when it comes from outside into the blood. We'll discuss them later. But the second process in gaseous exchange is the movement of gas from blood into cells. From blood into cells. So here, that means this gas which has diffused here, it has been transported in the blood vessel to where it is required, in the peripheral tissue. In the peripheral tissue, this gas entered the cell. Our cell is here. So the gas entered the cell, and in the cell, as I told you, we have a number of organelles. We have a number of organelles in the cell. All of these organelles, they perform different functions in the cell. So that means if the gas will enter the cell, different organelles will use that gas, and most often the gas which is entering, it is oxygen. So different organelles will use that oxygen, and at the end of the day will release what? Carbon dioxide. So this carbon dioxide again will diffuse out of the cell. If it will diffuse out of the cell, it will be transported again back into the lungs. Here in the lungs, the reverse process takes place. The gas again diffuses from the blood into air, and it is moved now. It is moved outside to the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is moved to the atmosphere. So the gas which is entering is somehow rich in oxygen, and it has carbon dioxide but in low concentration as compared with the gas which is moving out. So we shall see different composition of gases which is entering and which is moved out of the lungs. But this is simply what we are saying at the gaseous exchange. So gaseous exchange doesn't explain how the gas it is used within the cell, but it is simply explain how the gas they are crossed through the lungs, they are transported in the blood. Yeah, simply like that. But does not explain how the gases they are used within the cell. So sometimes gaseous exchange it is named as the external respiration. External respiration. That's why sometimes some of students and some of teachers they confuse gaseous exchange and respiration. Respiration, when you are saying an organism is respiring, sometimes we can mean is doing gaseous exchange, but this is external respiration. It's not internal. Internal respiration we call it the cellular respiration, which takes place in the cell, but this is external because it doesn't take place in the cell. It takes place in the organs such as lungs, blood vessels. So what we are saying is that the area where gaseous exchange with the environment actually takes place is called the respiratory surface. This area is called the respiratory surface. So gaseous exchange takes place in all organisms by the physical process of diffusion. In all organisms, gaseous exchange takes place by the physical process of diffusion. Now, in order for this to occur effectively, the respiratory surface must have some adaptation or characteristics. So we have characteristics of the respiratory surfaces, because in order gaseous exchange to occur efficiently, the respiratory surfaces they must have some of the characteristics to enable them to perform well the process of gaseous exchange. Now, firstly, they must be permeable. The respiratory surface must be permeable so that the gases can pass through. Permeable means something which allow anything or another substance to pass through it. So if we have material which does not allow other substance to pass through it, we call it as impermeable. So the respiratory surfaces must be permeable because we need to pass the respiratory gases. We need to pass the respiratory gases in the respiratory surfaces. So they must be permeable. That is one among the characteristics of the respiratory surface. But the second one, it must be thin. It must be thin because diffusion is efficient only over short distances of 1 millimeter or less. So if the respiratory surface is thick, that means it will delay the process of respiration. And at the end of the day, you cannot do anything because the thickness of the respiratory surface will delay the process of gaseous exchange. It should possess a large surface area so that a sufficient amount of gases are able to be exchanged according to the organism need. When we studied cytology, we explained about the concept of surface area. In the respiratory surfaces, always we have what we call is alveolus. The major function of alveolus is to increase the surface area. Of the respiratory surfaces. So sometimes it is very difficult for some students to understand the concept of respiratory surface because what they know is just about the other concepts, but not the concept of. Now let's say here we have the lungs. So let's say my lungs here. Let's say this is my lung. So assume within the lungs you have 1 million alveolus, and assume again another lung has 3 million alveolus. Now alveolus, they are packet-like, tightly packed in the lungs. Now, if they are 1 million and a gas must travel from outside into alveolus for gaseous exchange, do you think if the lung with 3 million alveolus or the one with 1 million alveolus will exchange the gas faster? I think if you think very easy, it will be 3 million alveolus, and that is the correct answer. Why? It is because the small size of the alveolus allow them to exchange the gases faster, and that is what we say that the alveolus, they increase the surface area. They increase the surface area for gaseous exchange to occur, and that is very important concept for you to know in your understanding of gaseous exchange. So number 4, it must be kept moist. Why? It is because the respiratory gases, they are diffused in the moist state. So the respiratory surfaces also, they must be moist, and if they are moist, it is easier for them to exchange the gases. Number 5, it should possess a good blood supply. Good blood supply or circulatory system enable the organisms to carry the exchanged gases. This is because for the large organisms such as mammals, they are using blood to transport oxygen. So here we are not talking of insects and things like that, but for large organism, blood supply is very important. And because in biology we are studying all organism, but the importance one in our concern, it is human being, because ourselves, we are human being. So in our study, you need to know that it is very important to know about human being rather than knowing about any organism. Why? It is because you know about yourself, and then later that's what you will come to apply in medicine when you are coming to study about the doctor of medicine, dentist, nursing, even someone who is going to study veterinary medicine, BVM, Bachelor of Veterinary Medicine, udaktari wa mifugo, bado unakuwa unatumia concept za nini? Za biology. And it's very important to understand, kwa sababu understand human being, it's very easy even to understand a mammal, because of the similarity between the living organisms. So that is what we are saying about the characteristics of the respiratory surface. Permeable to gases, thin, large surface area possession, must be kept moist, and it should possess a good blood supply. Now let's move to our second page here for our exercise book, and let's see how the discussion continues. About the gaseous exchange topic. So we are continuing with the concept of gaseous exchange. So we are saying that in order to cope with the increased demand, certain regions of the body have developed into specialized respiratory surface, such as gills and lungs. Different organisms possess a different respiratory surface. Each has evolved to work efficiently in a particular environment. These surfaces allow gases to enter and leave the body to move rapidly. So we have a number of organisms, as we shall study later. For example, fish, they are using gills. If you are going to amphibians, also they are using different mechanisms to perform gaseous exchange. So all of these they are just different categories of how living organisms they try to cope with the environment, because fish, they are living in an aquatic environment, while mammals, they are living in a terrestrial environment. So every living organism try to cope with the environment and by trying to cope with the environment, they are using different mechanisms to perform gaseous exchange. Now, how are these respiratory gases transported from the respiratory surface to the respiring cell and vice versa? As I told you, when we are studying respiration, we assume that you have the lungs, and then you have the cell. So there must be a transport of gases. Oxygenated from the lungs to the cell, and deoxygenated from the cell to the lungs. So gaseous exchange is not only the process which happens in the lungs, but also in this topic of gaseous exchange, we'll also study how this process of transportation takes place. How do we transport our blood from the lungs to the cell, and how from the cell to the lungs? What happens to the gas if it reaches the lungs? So what happens to the gas? How does it dissolve? So that is where we come to realize the concept of respiratory pigment, where we come to realize the concept of respiratory pigment and their necessity. So generally, the gases are carried by the blood vascular system. General gases, they are carried by the blood vascular system. The possession of a transport system provides a link between the respiratory surfaces and all other tissues of the organism, and enable oxygen and carbon dioxide to be continuously exchanged between the respiring surface and the cells. So it could be a foolish fool or a foolishness process if gaseous exchange could happen and there could be no transport mechanism which could transport the gases from the cell to, from the site of gaseous exchange to the cells. It could be a very, very foolish process. So God was not stupid. God was not stupid. Mungu hakuwa mjinga. Akagundua kwamba okay, I am making respiratory surface, but also I must make a mechanism of this surface to transport gases to the cells. So that's why in large animals we possess what? Transport system, which is a vascular system. Lakini pia in this vascular system, kwa mfano officer blood doesn't carry oxygen as it is. It has the very special component which is called the respiratory pigment. So respiratory pigment within blood is very important for carriage of oxygen. Na ndio maana kama hemoglobin ikiwa deficient, mtu tunamuita ana anemia maana yake nini? Hemoglobin iko kidogo. So huyu mtu anaweza kawa na iron deficiency maybe, au ana folate deficiency, au kuna excessive breakdown of the red blood cell due to sickle cell anemia au thalassemia. Lakini what we are talking about ni kwamba blood kama blood, usiokafikiri tu kwamba tukiwa na blood tunaweza kutransport gases. No, sometimes mtu anaweza kashinda kutransport gases. Kwa sababu gani? Kwa sababu hana hemoglobin nyingi. Kwa mfano mtu mwenye sickle cell anemia, zile cells zikishakuwa sickle shaped zinaenda kuvunjwa na bandama, that is spleen. So if the red blood cells, they are blocked by spleen, even if they are premature, that means huyu mtu atakuwa na run the deficiency of hemoglobin. Few number of red blood cell, also the deficiency of hemoglobin. So respiratory pigment, it is very important for you to know. So we are knowing that blood is carrying oxygen and carbon dioxide, but what is important within blood which is carrying oxygen and carbon dioxide is the respiratory pigment. So the presence of a respiratory pigment like hemoglobin in the blood further increases the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. Kwa blood ingekuwa haina hemoglobin, it could be very difficult for it to transport blood. Why? Tenda kusoma structure hemoglobin hapo mbele uone kwamba hemoglobin ndio inayochukua oxygen and carbon dioxide. In addition, there may be special ventilation movement which assists in ensuring a rapid exchange of gases between the animal and surrounding environment by maintaining steep diffusion gradient. Kwa mfano tunavyozungumzia kwa human being, kuna intercostal muscles, kuna inner intercostal muscles. Intercostal muscles yani ziko nyingi. Kuna inner, kuna interna, kuna media. Hizo intercostal muscle zina fibers ambazo zimerani kwenye different direction. Lakini one thing for your level that you need to know is that the intercostal muscles, they are helping in respiration. Kama ni mtu kufanya sana exercise, unaweza kawa unajua kwamba hata ukiwa unakimbia sana kuta sio tu mapafu yana move but also hizi mbavu nazo zina move. So that is intercostal muscles zina aid exchange of gases. So all of those need kuweza ku maintain a steep concentration gradient ambayo itasababishia tuweze exchange the gases faster. So gases exchange tunavyoenda kuidiscuss, discuss kwa a number of animals, yani kwa organism aina mbalimbali, lakini our concern will be human being. So we discuss many aspects about human being and that will be our concern. However, hapo tunaweza discuss tu organism wengine kwa juu, lakini human being ndio concern yetu kubwa na ndiko ambako maswali mengi yanatoka. So tukianza na small organisms, not much more important is small organism. Sio muhimu sana kwa jua, yani hapa pameandikwa tu ili tu kwamba yani wewe tu umefundishwa, lakini unaweza usisome haka. Lakini ni very important kwa sababu sometimes they can ask you in the exam. These organisms have a large surface area to volume ratio and do not require specialized structures for gaseous exchange. Protozoans such as amoeba are less than 1 mm in diameter and the gases diffuse over the whole body surface. So normally they are aquatic one. These small organisms normally they are aquatic and they exchange the gases through their body surface because it is very easy for them to exchange their gases. They have large surface area to volume ratio, so it is very easy for them to exchange their gases. So now let we leave this small organism and let's move to another page. You can see how we can move to another group of organisms. So this part of bony fish, actually this part of bony fish, it is out of your syllabus. And some of teachers they are teaching, some of teachers they do not teach. So naomba niambie kitu kimoja kwamba naifundisha hii part kwenye kipindi kinachofuata. Hii bony fish yote, mechanism ya gaseous exchange factors, bony fish yote naifundisha kwenye kipindi kinachofuata. Ila ni kuombe kitu kimoja. Mimi nilisoma wakati nasoma bony fish, wakati nasoma biology advance, nilisoma for my own leisure na ku increase the experience. Kwa hiyo kama una vitu vingi vya kusoma, each kipindi session ya pili iluke, nenda session ya 3. Hizi video nita create playlist yake. Zile za mwanzo na achana nazo kwanza, lakini part ya bony fish kama wewe una vitu vingi vya kusoma, achana nayo kabisa. Tutaendelea tu huko mbele, hamna shida yote. Ndio maana unaenda kwenye kutype tulivyotoka kwenye yale maelezo ya mwanzo, tumehamia kwenye fix law. Hakuna zile mbwembwe nyingi za pale katikati, hazipo. Kwa hiyo nikutakia wakati mwema. Kipindi kijacho tutaendelea na hiyo bony fish. Tukitoka bony fish tutaingia moja kwa moja kwenye mammals. Tutaanza kudiscuss respiratory structure, mechanisms za transport gas, na mwisho wa siku tutamaliza hiyo, tutaingia kwenye respiration. Thank you.